So now we're going to get started on this involuntary civil commitment process. That was a very serious crime. That was again funded by Wells Fargo. This was Wells Fargo's scam. First, before that, real quick, I want to mention in that last video, what I meant to mention is you can also watch these videos in the mobile crisis analysis section. A lot of it, this is an explanation of what happens when these counselors come to my apartments, and then these three right here, part 2, 3, and 4, those are an analysis of the mobile crisis notes. I go over those notes in detail. And then part 5, you can probably skip it because in the videos that you've already watched, if you've watched this series of YouTube videos, you've already got the information that's in this part 5. But now we go into the civil commitment, and we got the zip file for this as the involuntary petition analysis. So I'll go ahead and extract that. And we'll be returning to these other folders throughout this process. Some of the evidence is evidence from more than one segment. Okay, so this involuntary petition analysis. Now I've got some documents in here. This is the redacted civil commitment petition. I've taken the addresses and stuff like this off. This MP4, I'll explain what happened in this set of videos. You won't have to watch that MP4 video, but that's a video that I made explaining what happens. This is a document from the governor of North Carolina about the civil commitment issues, and this is the North Carolina law for kidnapping, and I'll explain how all this ties together. Now, I've got to give you the background first. Is that me and Jenny have been arguing about this for a year and a half. It happened around the first week of December 17. At April 19, we're arguing about this some more. Figured out that Jenny was among the ones who had talked to Abby on February 22nd, 19. And it's, at this point, there's no question in my mind, Jenny's done this. And we're arguing about this, and I'm getting pissed at Jenny. Jenny repeatedly tells me that I'm paranoid, that I have a paranoid delusion, all of this bullshit. And I get so sick of this with Jenny that what I tell her, and this is around the first or second week of April of 19, is I say, Jenny, here's what you do. Okay? Go in front of a judge and tell them that I have a paranoid delusion and file a petition to have me involuntarily hospitalized. I say, prepare for me to contend with all parties that you are filing in bad faith, and one of us is going to go out of the door in handcuffs. Either I'm going to go out of the door in handcuffs because I've got a paranoid delusion, they're forcibly hospitalizing me, or you're going to go out of the door in handcuffs for lying to a judge or a magistrate. And at different times I told her to go in front of a judge, go in front of a magistrate. But the sentiment behind this, what I'm saying is, Jenny, I'm sick and tired of you lying to me about this. You've been lying to me for a year and a half. So I want you to go in front of somebody who can throw you in jail for lying. And this is what gets Wells Fargo's gears turning as to how they can cover their crimes up. And that's why they start getting these crisis counselors. That's why they start getting Jenny to try to get my doctor to talk to Jenny in private. And so once they ran the scam with the crisis counselors on April 17th, me and Jenny argue about this over the next period of days on and off. It's on April 21st, 2019. Me and Jenny are arguing about this. And I got so frustrated, and I make a heated statement. I say, don't call anybody to come over here because I'm going to be a vegetable when they get here. That goes a reference to what would happen if I poisoned myself and somebody came to intervene. And it was before 8 o'clock p.m. that I'd made that comment. And by about 8 o'clock p.m. I'd calmed down, but Jenny had me absolutely, I'm a wreck at this point. I'm so frustrated, I'm so furious and angry and feeling desperate. I'm just in a terrible, terrible, terrible emotional condition. Very frustrated. And I'm talking to Jenny on text at 11:03 p.m. We're talking continuously. And all of a sudden, as I'm texting Jenny at 11:03 p.m., I'm about to go to bed, there's a knock at my door. And it is the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police, an officer of the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police, who I now know to be Christopher Sean DeVonzo, was at my door. He asked if he can come in. I tell him, no, I'm going to bed. He says, well, I'm going to have to. Okay, he makes it clear to me that I have no choice about him coming in. So he comes to my apartment, and very shortly after that, within a minute or so, 2 other officers come in my apartment. And Christopher DeVonzo explains to me that because of what's happened, the nature of what's going on, that he's going to have to take me somewhere to be looked at. And he makes it clear that I have no choice. And so I gather some of my things. I gather my wallet and my cell phone, and they let me, I drink one of my meal shakes that I drink. I drink Soylent shakes for my meals. And I packed up about 3 Soylent shakes to take with me to the place to be quote-unquote looked at. As I get outside, he tells me they have to put me in handcuffs because of what's happened, that they have to put me in handcuffs. And he puts me in handcuffs and puts me in the back of his patrol car. And these handcuffs, they're on too tight, and they're making me extremely uncomfortable. At this point, I'm getting very, very distressed. And I ask him if I can have the handcuffs moved in front of me. And he says no, but he can loosen them up in the back. He will not put the handcuffs in front of me, despite the fact that I'm very calm and cooperative. Again, I'm distressed for me personally, but my demeanor towards him, I'm cooperative. I'm not putting up a fight about anything. I'm very calm and measured in my demeanor. There's no reason he shouldn't put the handcuffs up front. So I get his patrol car, and we drive to Atrium Health, Behavioral Health, Charlotte. We drive to this hospital at a very, very, very high rate of speed. And again, by the time he put me in handcuffs was probably 11:05, 11:06 p.m. He puts me in handcuffs, puts me in his patrol car. And this place at Atrium Health is 501 Billingsley Road. They have an inpatient unit, an inpatient psychiatric unit on the bottom floor. And this is also the same place where I get my routine care. So I go to the same building on the upstairs to the outpatient unit on one of the other floors, to the outpatient unit. And actually, I think the outpatient unit might be on the bottom floor too. But the point is, I go to the outpatient unit to talk to my nurse practitioner to get my meds filled and stuff like this. So this is the same building where I get my routine care. Now, before we'd done this, I did not realize that Atrium Health had inpatient units. I've been going there for years, but I didn't know that. And so on the way, I'm asking the officer some questions about. So she filed a petition. She sent some paperwork. She did some paperwork, stuff like this. I'm asking. And the officer's responses make it clear that he is not in possession of this civil commitment petition that has been filed on me. He says stuff like, whoever, I forget one point, I asked him if he signed it, if she had signed some paperwork or something. He says, well, whoever filled it out will sign it, or something like this. But his various answers, I can't remember them all. But it's obvious to me as we're going along here that he doesn't have this petition in his possession. Now, I'm suspecting this is a scam because Jenny's been scamming me the whole time. Jenny had always told me about her police officer neighbor who was a young guy, and I would have put this officer at my door to be between maybe 24, 25 to maybe 33 years old. I'm not good at judging people's ages. But he was a young guy, and I figure this is probably Jenny's neighbor that's doing this, and he's helping her in a scam. And I'm very I'm distressed about what's happened. I'm distressed about being put in handcuffs. But as I'm on the way over there, I'm like, I'm going to be able to talk to a doctor before I'm ever sent anywhere to be hospitalized, right? And he says, yeah, well, they're going to have you talk to someone. And he also gives me kind of vague and negative sounding answers to the questions about, is this somewhere where they keep people overnight? Stuff like this. And I was so confident that I would be able to explain to any competent doctor at all. This whole thing was a transparent load of bullshit, okay? I'm perfectly fine, and that's why I didn't ask him to take me to the magistrate and let me talk to the magistrate and stuff like this. And of course, he repeatedly assures me that I'm going to talk to a doctor, and I think that everything is going to be fine. Now we get to the inpatient unit at Atrium Health. The officer takes me in. There's a large gentleman at the door, a bigger guy at the door. And he takes me to be put into a gown, and he says there's a 99% chance that they're going to keep you overnight. You'll be talking to a doctor, but there's a 99% chance they're going to keep you overnight. And so I go and I take a urine test and stuff like this. And it's several minutes after I'm there that the Charlotte Mecklenburg police officer, Christopher DeVonzo, comes back in with the petition. And he's got the custody order, and him and the guy at the door have an exchange. They say, we will make them the same. That way we can say that we put the wrong time. Now, I don't know the meaning of this, but this is suspect to me of what he's saying there. I don't know what he's talking about, though, until later. So we left off the last video. I talked about how when I was delivered to the inpatient units, the officer and the guy at the door at the inpatient unit had an exchange where the officer says, we'll just make them the same. That way we can say that we put the wrong time. And this is following when the officer says this, the guy at the door Atrium nods. In this video, we're going to go over this evidence ID 6, this involuntary commitment petition. The first 2 pages are the cover pages. On page 3, this is the custody order. So there are some parties involved here. There's the petitioner, the person who's applying to have somebody involuntarily hospitalized. In this case, that's Jenny. There's the person who is to be involuntarily hospitalized. That's called the respondent. In this case, that's me. There's the magistrate, who is the one who issues this custody order. They issue this to the police. There's the officer that's issued the custody order, the officer that processes the petition. And then there is the examination unit where the respondent is taken to be evaluated. And so the process is that the petitioner appears before the magistrate. This is Jenny. She files a petition to have me involuntarily hospitalized. If the magistrate finds good cause, the magistrate will enter one of these custody orders to the police, and the police officer will come and take you out, do all these actions they took to me. They will enter your residence against your consent, put you in handcuffs, transport you to the hospital. All of those actions, this custody order, signed by the magistrates, and in the possession of the officer, is what gives him the right to take all of these actions against my will. And I'm going to go to the last 2 pages here. This is Jenny's petition that she filed. And remember that Allie Rowe, the crisis counselor, accompanied Jenny to the magistrate. Now, here are the statements that Jenny and the crisis counselor made. Respondent has recently exhibited delusional behaviors and suicidal ideations. Okay, delusional behaviors is wrong. What this is about, when she refers to delusional behaviors, in this next sentence, he believes that his coworkers are out to get him. They're referring to this privacy violation that I believe to have occurred. Okay, so this is a fraudulent statement right here. This first statement is fraudulent, except for suicidal ideations. I did have suicidal ideations. That's a pass. He believes that coworkers are out to get him. This is a lie. Okay, this is a fraudulent statement. That I'm in immediate danger from them. This is a fraudulent statement. His speech is pressured and incoherent. Okay. Incoherent is wrong. You can listen to evidence ID 2 in the privacy violation folder. I've got me talking to Jenny for 50 minutes. You can see that my speech is very coherent and they're very clearly logical. Pressured, I would give them credit for if it weren't for the fact that this process, this is such total fraud. All these statements, I would give them credit for pressured because I talk fast. I have a natural trait that I talk fast. I've talked fast my whole life. I talked fast before I ever had any mental illness symptoms, and regardless if I'm having any symptoms or not, I talk fast. And this is chronically confused for pressured speech by medical people. My apartment is unkempt and neglected. Okay, and unkempt is a strange word to use here, but that is an accurate statement. He sent petitioner numerous texts to the petitioner, numerous texts outlining his intention to self-harm. This is a fraudulent statement. I had sent one heated statement to Jenny where I said on April 21st, I say, don't have him come over here to get me because I want to be a vegetable. Don't send anybody up here because I want to be a vegetable. And it was in response to what would happen. That statement was in reference to what would happen if I poisoned myself and someone came to interrupt. A respondent has previous diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder. That came from Allie Rowe. I told Allie Rowe that when these crisis counselors were at my apartments. That came from Allie Rowe. This pressured speech most likely came from Allie Rowe as well. But this previous diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder, that's correct. Unknown meds, potential fears for his ultimate safety. Okay. So the bottom line of this, is that these statements are on the whole, this is fraud. That every statement that is used as justification, exhibited delusional behaviors, that was false. Friends are out to get me, that is fraud. Immediate danger, fraud. Speech is pressured and incoherent, fraud. Okay, and my apartment is unkempt, yes, but that's not a justification. Numerous texts outlining his intention to self-harm. This is also fraud. If he'd sent one text and made a heated statement, that would have passed. Okay, and under the law, to have somebody forcibly hospitalized, you have to have the following. So first, you have to be mentally ill. That's the first. Second, you have to have one of these two. You have to have either made plans for suicide, or you've threatened suicide, one of those two, and there's a reasonable probability that you will commit suicide. Okay? And so suicidal ideations, these are thoughts. Thoughts do not rise to the bar. And this one heated statement that I made does not rise to the bar either. I think you can understand that when you get in an argument and you're very, very emotional and you get all wound up and you make some heated statement, it's an abuse of the law to have somebody to come and put you in handcuffs over that heated statement. And it's particularly an abuse of the law when you consider that they're smuggling in all this other stuff. And of course, again, this heated statement, that I've made statements like these before in the past, this does not rise to the bar. There's a reasonable probability that I'm going to commit suicide. But the takeaway here is that this is fraud. Okay, that's the thing to remember, is that on the whole, the statements made in this petition are fraudulent. Now, going back to the custody order, we have a problem here. Okay. The officer certifies that this order was received and the respondent taken into custody as follows. Taken into custody is the time I'm put into handcuffs and put in his patrol car. He says this was April 21st, 2019 at 11:43 p.m. Okay, and here he signs it. Now, this is funny. Remember, I already told you that it was about 11:03 to 11:06, sometime around there, that I was taken into custody. Now let's go on to the next page, and we'll have the time delivered to the examination units. This is the Atrium Health Behavioral Health, 17.2 miles away. I was delivered to the examination units April 21st, 2019 at 11:43 p.m. Okay, this is obviously impossible. I cannot drive, I can be transported 17.2 miles instantaneously. Okay, these times are entered as exactly the same. And why would they be doing this? This is the meaning of the exchange between the officer and the guy at the door at Atrium when he says, we'll make them the same. That way we can say we put the wrong time. They're deliberately entering these dates incorrectly, fraudulent timestamps to cover up the fact that the officer was not in the possession of this custody order when he came to my apartment, entered my residence against my will, and proceeded to take his other actions. The master will have an audit file that will show the time this custody order was handed off, and that's probably between 11:30 and 11:35. I would say the custody order was handed off. And if he puts the correct time on here that he took me into custody at 11:06, this is obviously going to incriminate him. Because if the petition was handed off at 11:35, he couldn't have possibly had it in his possession at 11:06 when he got me. So what they're doing here is they're putting these the same. That way, when the officer gets back to the magistrate's office, he can say, "Oh man, we've been up all day. We had a mental lapse, and we actually put the times the same accidentally." Okay, and this provides them with plausible deniability that they can use to cover up the fact that this petition was not in the possession of the officer at the time that he was at my apartment. And so, with this petition and its processing, we have a lot of crimes. And in the next video, we'll get into what those crimes are. So now we're going to look at the crimes involved in this this petition for involuntary commitment. As I showed you in the previous videos, Jenny and this crisis counselor made a slew of fraudulent statements to be used as justification for the magistrate to issue this custody order. So this is fraud by crisis counselor Allie Rowe and fraud by Jennifer Cox. Signing this, making these statements under oath, this is perjury. So at the very least, Jenny has committed perjury. If Allie Rowe made her statements under oath, Allie Rowe has committed perjury. And then this custody order. This is fraud. I certify that they were received entering the dates fraudulently. This is fraud. Most likely, this is perjury as well. And of course, he certifies. So he's got two instances of fraud here: the fraud of certifying, the fraud of putting the timestamp incorrectly, the fraud of putting both of these the same. And then you have the guy at the door at Atrium, when the officer says, we'll make them the same. That way we can say that we put the wrong time. The officer nods. The officer knows the context of this. The guy at the door knows the context of this. So the guy at the door at Atrium Health, and thereby Atrium Health, was involved in this crime as well. And so this crime on the part of Atrium Health being involved in this. And with all of these crimes that I've discussed thus far, and the crimes, and also the crimes I'll discuss in the next video, this has the obvious appearance of being coordinated by all the parties involved. And so there is going to be a conspiracy to commit a felony involved with Jennifer Cox, Allie Rowe, potentially these other people at the crisis line, Christopher Lavanzo, the Charlotte Mecklenburg police officer, Christopher Lavanzo, and the guy at the door at Atrium. And then we have this illegal processing of this civil commitment petition where the officer was not in possession of the custody order when he came to my apartment. This is a crime in and of itself. And in the next video, we'll discuss what crime has taken place there. I'll add to, for this video, that as we will see, of course, given what we already know, we have very strong reason to believe that Wells Fargo is behind this in its entirety. Okay, because Wells Fargo has paid Allie Rowe to create this fraudulent healthcare record. Obviously, they're the only party in the mix that can pay Allie Rowe $186,000 to pay off her mortgage. Very likely that this guy at the door at Atrium, plus the Charlotte Mecklenburg police officer, very likely that both of them were paid. I'm not sure if they would do this for free. The Charlotte Mecklenburg police officer, this is Jenny's personal friend, so just maybe he did this for free, but I doubt it. And so, in addition to, I mentioned the parties to this conspiracy, this crime of conspiracy. I've mentioned the other parties, and it's most likely that Wells Fargo and one or more people within Wells Fargo are part of the planning of this crime. Now we're going to talk about what crime was it exactly involved in this unlawful processing of this civil commitment petition, where the officer is supposed to have the custody order in his possession, and signed by the magistrate in his possession when he comes and handcuffs me, puts me in his patrol car, enters my residence against my consent. He takes a series of actions that have the effect of curtailing my liberty, or my freedom, as I'm entitled under the Constitution. I'm entitled liberty. And this officer is doing what police do. Police are routinely involved in the curtailment of your liberty, as you're entitled under the Constitution. And given that this order in his possession, signed by the magistrate in his possession, is what gives him the right to do all this stuff, what crime has he committed by not having the custody order in his possession? Well, I want you to forget about everything about my story in my case against Wells Fargo and all these events. Forget everything about me for a brief time, and I want to ask you a question directly to you, and I want you to make an answer either verbally in your head, on paper, But I want to talk about what this crime was in principle, and I want to use an analogy just to speak with you, the person watching this video. So if an ordinary person comes into your house by force, puts your hands behind your back and puts you in handcuffs, goes and forcibly takes you out of your residence, puts you in a patrol car against your consent, forcibly put you in a car, in their car against their consent, and takes you somewhere to be locked up, is that a crime? Again, I want to repeat that. If an ordinary person, just some random person, comes in your house, they come in your house by force, they put you in handcuffs behind your back, against your will, they put you in their car against your will, and they transport you several miles to somewhere where you're going to be locked up. Okay, is that a crime? Again, I'm not asking you what crime it is. I'm just asking you, is that a crime? Okay, and so give me your answer. I would prefer that you write it down, but if you want to just think of it yourself, you can keep track, because I want to ask you a few of these questions. But just keep your answer. Okay. And so I'm giving you've answered that. If you haven't answered that, pause the video and answer it. But here's the next question. Okay. If a police officer comes into your residence against your consent, puts you in handcuffs against your consent, puts you in a patrol car against your consent, and he does all this for no reason. So if a police officer for no reason comes inside your house by force, he puts you in handcuffs by force, he takes you out of your residence by force, he puts you in his patrol car by force, and takes you somewhere to be locked up, is that a crime? Okay, and here's the difference. The first person was an ordinary person who had no reason to do this. He came and he took all those actions that I described. In the second scenario, it's exactly the same, except in this instance, instead of a regular person doing this, it's a police officer doing this. Okay, so does the fact that it's a police officer change anything at all? Okay, does this subtract at all from the fact that the actions that the person took was a crime? Okay, so answer that. Okay, given you answered that, if you haven't answered that, pause the video and answer it. Here's my next question. What if the police came for no reason? They came into your residence against your consent by force. They forcibly put you in handcuffs. They forcibly put you in the back of a car, and they forcibly transport you to somewhere to be locked up. And then after you're at this place where you're locked up, after the fact, they have another police officer go in front of a judge and make known to be fraudulent claims that are known to be fraudulent by both officers. The officer that took you out of your residence against your will, that he knows that these claims are fraudulent. The officer that goes before the judge, he makes these claims that are fraudulent in service, and they're known to be fraudulent to him, and he makes these claims to a judge in order to obtain an arrest warrant after the fact. So the police officer comes in your residence for no reason, comes to your residence by force, puts you in handcuffs by force, takes you out of your residence by force, throws you in a car, and transports you by force. After the fact, they get a fraudulent arrest warrant, and they use this to justify. They somehow fudge the details to make it appear this arrest warrant was in the officer's possession, or that this arrest warrant had been filled out before the officer comes and does all these actions to you. Okay, is that a crime? So here are the differences we have. In the very first scenario, it was an ordinary person coming to take you out of your house and to handcuff you and to take you out of your house against your consent for no reason. In the second scenario, we've changed one detail. This time, it is a police officer that performs the actions. Okay, and I think you would have concluded that the fact that it's a police officer in that second scenario, we've still got a crime. Okay. Now the third scenario, we add a new detail that not only is it a police officer, but after the fact, the police officer has a fraudulent arrest warrant prepared, used to justify taking you. Okay, does that fraudulent arrest warrant, obtained after the fact, does that change anything? Okay, does that make any of this any less of a crime? When the officer has no reason to do this to you, does he suddenly have a reason to do this based on a fraudulent arrest warrant that was, with claims known to be fraudulent by the officer? Okay, and I think there in your reasoning, okay, you answer that. Go ahead and answer it. and pause the video if you haven't answered, but answer that. And I think in your reasoning, you will see that that's also a crime. And I'll add one more scenario. What if before the fact, okay, just for the purposes of the sake of argument, what if before the fact, the officer has another officer obtain an arrest warrant based on claims known to both officers to be fraudulent? So in this last scenario, the only detail we've changed from the preceding one is that instead of getting the arrest warrant after the fact, the arrest warrant is obtained before the fact. In both cases, the arrest warrant is obtained based on known to be fraudulent claims by both officers. Okay, does that make it any less of a crime? Okay, and so I think if you what I've given you 4 scenarios there. I think that you'll conclude in all 4 scenarios that they have committed a crime. Okay, every single last one of them. And if you think as I do, the way that I think about the situation, is this very last scenario that I've given you, where the officer before the fact has a known to be fraudulent arrest warrant issued, and then comes for no reason and takes you out of your house by force, and puts you in handcuffs by force, takes you out of your house by force, and transports you many, many miles by force. That this is no different from the first scenario. That each of these parties, the person in the first scenario who's an ordinary person, and the officer in the last scenario, are equally responsible for a crime. The fact that the person in the very last scenario is a police officer does not give them any right whatsoever to do any of these actions. There's absolutely nothing changed. And in the next video, here we've established, if you follow my reasoning, we've established, at least by my reasoning, why this is a crime committed against you. In the next video, we're going to come back to my situation, and we're going to see how my situation is analogous to what I've told you, and we're going to find out if this officer, what crime has this officer committed based on what I've told you. And of course, we can also discuss what crime in this hypotheticals that I've given you, what crime has been committed against you. And so, what was this crime in principle? To go back to your example, the example that I gave you, the hypothetical in the last video, where I gave you 4 scenarios and asked you to answer the questions. And we'll go back, for the sake of argument, we'll go back to the first scenario that I gave you, where an ordinary person comes into your residence against your consent by force. They forcibly put you in handcuffs. They forcibly take you out of your house. They forcibly put you in a car, and they, against your will, they drive you many, many miles to a third location where you're to be locked up. Okay. Now, what is this crime? What does this have the ring of? Okay. What does this sound an awfully lot alike? Well, I'll tell you what it sounds like. It sounds like a kidnapping. I would say probably most people who watch this video, you came to that conclusion. And if you followed my reasoning and reasoned as I do, that it's no different in the last scenario when the officer obtains a fraudulent arrest warrant. That in normal circumstances, an arrest warrant obtained before the fact would give the officer the right to curtail your liberty, to take all these actions against your consent. The fact that this arrest warrant is fraudulent, based on fraudulent claims, that changes the nature of what has happened. And the officer derives no legal right from that arrest warrant. And then in the scenario that I gave you, the third scenario that I gave you, that's the scenario that has the most semblance to mine as an analogy, where I said if the police officer, after the fact, he's already taken you against your consent, he's already entered your house against your consent, put you in handcuffs by force, taken you out of your residence by force, put you in a patrol car by force, transported you against your will, and then after the fact obtains a fraudulent arrest warrant, that's most analogous to me. Where this civil commitment petition that was filed was based on fraudulent claims. And for that reason, that's how I view my situation, that this officer for no reason whatsoever, has came into my residence by force, put me in handcuffs by force, even though I went cooperatively. It was by force because it was made clear to me that I had no choice. He takes me out of my house by force, puts me in handcuffs by force, puts me in a patrol car against my consent, and transports me many, many miles. In principle, this is a kidnapping, and this fraudulent civil commitment petition that was issued changes nothing. Now we have an additional complicating factor in the fact that, as I showed you, the officer never had a legal right anyways, whether this petition was legit or not, because he was not in possession of the petition at 11:06 p.m. When he came and took me into custody. And of course here he certifies this order was received. They entered these fraudulent timestamps, and so we have two elements that would seem to completely remove this officer's legal right to come into my residence, by force, to put me in handcuffs by force, take me out of my house, out of my apartment by force, to transport me by force. Two elements. One is that the petition was known to him to be fraudulent. This is almost certainly 99%. I know 99% certain this officer was Jenny's friend. The fact that he is engaged in fraud himself in this process would suggest that he knows of the fraudulent nature, of the scam nature of this entire process. Same for the guy at the door at Atrium. So the officer knows at the time that he goes to process his petition that it was based on fraudulent claims. Okay, then it was not in his possession. Okay, so I've given you in principle. I think you understand why in principle this is a kidnapping. Now let's look at what this is under the law. And this is North Carolina General Statute. I don't know how to read this. This reads as either Section 1439 or Chapter 14, Section 39. I'm not sure how to read this. But this is the North Carolina General Statute for kidnapping. And it says, any person who shall unlawfully confine, restrain, or remove from one place to another any other person 16 years of age or over without the consent of such person, or any other person under the age of 16 without the consent of the parent or legal custodian of such person, shall be guilty of kidnapping if such confinement, restraint, or removal is for the purpose of, and here I want to focus on number 2, facilitating the commission of any felony. Okay, so here to my situation, this is the one that's relevant, and I want to extract these elements. So it's any person shall unlawfully confine, restrain, or remove from one place to another. For the moment, I want to forget about the word unlawfully and look at the rest of these elements: confine, restrain, remove one place to another, facilitating the commission of any felony. Okay, so this officer confined me against my consent by putting me in handcuffs. That is a reasonable, I think, confinement. Putting me in handcuffs is certainly a restraint. He confines me in his patrol car against my consent. And in transporting me 17.2 miles to the inpatient unit at Billingsley Road, he has removed me from one place to another against my consent. And as I showed you in the previous video, we have numerous felonies that are being facilitated here. We have the fraudulent civil commitment petition that we can reason was known to be fraudulent by the officer. That involves fraud on two parties, Jennifer Cox and Allie Rowe, perjury on Jenny Cox, probably perjury on Allie Rowe. We have the officer committing fraud and perjury on this custody order. We have the guy at Atrium Health, the inpatient guy at the inpatient units, participating, also taking a role in this fraud. Okay, and a separate instance of perjury here. I do believe this is perjury when they swear this. And then we have the fact that all of these people appear to be involved, to be engaged in a conspiracy with a single goal. Okay, so we easily meet every last one of these elements. Okay, we blatantly meet these, And we also blatantly meet number 2. And if you use some reasoning, we don't have just any felony. We have a series of related felonies, numbering 5, 6, 7, however many felonies that we have. Okay, so we meet all these elements, and now we've got to introduce back. The only thing left is to introduce into this the word unlawfully. Okay, and I go back to my original argument. We've met all these other elements, and so the question becomes, where does the officer derive his legal right to confine, restrain, or move me from one place to another? And again, I would argue as a legal argument that there is no right conveyed by a known to be fraudulent petition. That's one issue. The second is that not being in the possession of this custody order, he has no legal right in any instance. Okay, so we have here both under the law and in principle, this was a kidnapping. Okay, and to return to in principle, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a police officer. I don't care if you're the president of the United States. I don't care if you're General Schwarzkopf. You do not come into my apartment for no reason, enter by force, put me in handcuffs by force, take me out by force, and put me in a car and drive me all over the place by force to have me locked up for no reason. You do not do that no matter who you are. And I do not care that there happens to be a legal process that you can abuse and fraudulently assume to kind of provide a guise for what you're actually doing. Okay, and in light of this, the fact that Atrium Health, okay, this guy at the door, when he nods and the officer says, we'll make him the same, the guy at the door nods, he knows the context, he's part of this. This means that the people at Atrium Health knew from the get-go that there was no legal reason for me to be at this hospital, and this makes my stay at Atrium Health a civil and criminal false imprisonment. So on the part of this officer, we have a civil trespass in entering my residence. We have a civil and criminal false imprisonment for putting me in handcuffs. We have a civil and criminal false imprisonment for putting me in his patrol car, and we have at least one instance of kidnapping for transporting me from one place to another in the commission of a felony. Now, reading that definition under the North Carolina law, there we could have. It would almost seem that every element of this, we have repeated instances of kidnapping, but what I've described is at minimum just of the crimes, just in processing this petition. Now, why would they do this? Why would the officer process this petition? Without go ahead and come and get me and take me out of my apartments by force? Do all this without the petition in his possession? If you go back and remember in my first video about this, I told you about how me and Jenny argued, and I threatened Jenny to go and have me involuntarily hospitalized. And I told her to be prepared for me to contend with all parties that she is filing in bad faith. So when she goes to the magistrate or the judge, I'm going to go and argue she's filing with bad faith. So what they've done is they've had this officer come and get me in my apartment without the custody order in his possession. He repeatedly assures me that I'm going to be examined by a doctor. He suggests to me or outright tells me that the place he's taking me to is a place where they don't keep people overnight. And so what happens is I get to the hospital. I'm already behind hospital walls at the time that this custody order is issued, and that prevents me from going and arguing with the magistrate before the fact to get Jenny in trouble. That's why they're doing this. And in the next video, I'm going to go over very briefly this document in the folder, commitment issues for law enforcement. And here we're going to take a brief look at this commitment issues for law enforcement. This document I've got up right here. This is this document. I've got this up, and this contains some of the details that I use for my legal argument. Again, I've got an argument for what the crime was in principle and what it was under the law. And here you'll read that a custody order is an analogous to an arrest warrant. Both function to deprive an individual of his liberty. Okay, and you see here this is about forcible entry. It gives the criteria for forcible entry. and they have to have the signed custody order in his possession. Now they give alternatives here in the second and third about entering private premises. But it does not give any other. These all pertain to entering the residence. With an arrest warrant, let me go back. An arrest warrant, if there's an arrest warrant issued, it is put in an electronic system. I'm pretty sure that's how it's done in North Carolina, in most places. And so, an officer, once an arrest warrant has been put out, any officer can arrest that person based on that arrest warrant. That's how I understand it. These custody orders are not issued. There's no electronic system, and this is why the physical custody order has to be in the officer's possession for him to have permission to do any of these actions. This is ultimately going to require a legal expert, and I may actually pay for a lawyer for an hour of their time to confirm this. But that's according to the legal research that I've done. I've looked at this a lot, and it seems to be very, very clear that the mere fact that this custody order was signed by the magistrate at 9:40 means nothing unless this custody order is in the officer's possession at the time that he took me into custody. And obviously, if the officer didn't know that he was breaking the law, there would be no need to enter these details fraudulently. And you notice here it says, I certify that this order was received. Okay? So it doesn't say I certify that this order existed, or I knew about this order, or that I knew that somebody filed this. It says the order was received. And everywhere I've looked in the law, you can look at the North Carolina General Statutes. I believe this is under the health and public safety of the North Carolina General Statutes. That everything that I've read seems to indicate exactly what I say. That without this petition, this custody order in the officer's possession, he has no legal right to take any of these actions. And then I can always fall back on my other arguments that this known to be fraudulent petition, known to be fraudulent to him, conveys no legal rights. Now, I want to real quickly, I'm going to go back. I've talked about before how we had every reason to believe that Wells Fargo was ultimately behind this, given that they were behind this fraudulent healthcare record, where the same crisis counselor prepared a fraudulent healthcare record that attended Jenny to the magistrates about how we have good evidence to believe that they're behind the privacy violation. And so it would only be common sense that they're also behind this civil commitment process, that Wells Fargo is using Jenny as a means to execute their crimes. Well, here's some more evidence of this on message 3041. Okay, actually, here, let's highlight this section right here. Okay, did I tell you about Jenny filing involuntary commitment papers on me? No! Exclamation point. Yes, she got her friends who lives next to her and is a police officer to help her. And she told me about this guy before. And I'd say some stuff here, and then we have here, I talk about my concern that her police officer neighbor contacts the people in the mountains, which is a whole massive backstory to the mountains I'll have to include at some point. But here she says, no, she got her friend, next door neighbor. Okay, she says, I suppose I can understand why. If she knows the situation has caused you to have suicidal thoughts, it probably worried her. It's possible it was because she cares. Okay, so what I want you to notice first is notice how the null hypothesis is that she doesn't care. Okay, but to go back into this conversation, go and tell one of your friends as an experiment. Go and tell one of your friends, say, did I tell you about so-and-so? So pick one of your friends that you know and use their name for this and tell it to another friend. Did I tell you about so-and-so filing involuntary commitment papers on me? Okay. What they're not going to say is, no, exclamation point. I suppose I can understand why. If she knows the situation has caused you to have suicidal thoughts, it's probably worried her. It's possible because she cares. When I say this, this begs all kinds of questions. Okay, and it's also kind of a juicy gossip thing too to know, but it begs all kinds of questions. So what you would expect, she might say no in the beginning, but before or after she says no, you would expect, what happened? Did you get in an argument? What was her justification? Why did she do this? Her police officer friends and neighbor. I didn't know that her neighbor was a police officer. There's all kinds of, and of course the other thing that it begs is, what is an involuntary commitment papers? Probably somewhere between 20 and 60% of people don't even know what this is. And of those, 40 to 80% that do know, they don't know what the process is. Okay, so this begs all kinds of questions. Courtney asked none of these questions that are begged by this about what happened. Did you get in an argument? What was your justification? All of this. Courtney's answers. These are the answers of someone who knows exactly what has happened. Okay, and again, notice how it's possible it was because she cares. Notice how the null hypothesis is that she doesn't care. Okay, what you can read into this is A, Courtney knows exactly what happened, and B, it was a scam. And I read the part about it's a scam in a number of ways. One of these being the fact that she says it's possible it was because she cares. What's implied there is that the null hypothesis, the primary suspicion that she's up to no good doing this, and given that Courtney very obviously knows exactly what has happened, why is she denying this? Okay, if it's not a liability for her and Wells Fargo, why would she not just tell me? Now, if that doesn't have you convinced, this is on June 7th, 2019, okay, that we make this. Let me show you here. This is message 3041. Let me go back to message 2550. Okay, and these are made around May 19th. Okay, so on May 19th, I've already told her this. And so what's going on here? Well, you can read this. I told her the process to get somebody voluntarily hospitalized, and she did that. So here, Courtney is having trouble keeping track of what she's supposed to know, what she's not supposed to know over the 18 days or whatever, 19 days, whatever's passed by the time we're having this conversation. And again, if you can't understand my reasoning here about why, when I say this, this begs all kinds of questions, and that, when she doesn't ask these questions, it makes it obvious she knows exactly what happened. Try this with one of your friends. Okay? So tell your friend Maggie about Mary. Say, hey Maggie, did I tell you about Mary filing involuntary commitment papers on me? Okay, and see if she says no. I understand why. It's possible because she cares. No. Very obviously, Courtney knows exactly what has happened, and this is further evidence that Wells Fargo is behind this entire thing. And as we go through this exercise, you will find there's absolutely no reason to believe at any point that Wells Fargo is not behind everything that happens. And in fact, as we continue to go along, the picture becomes more and more clear that Wells Fargo is behind it in its entirety.